Thank you, Beth, and thank all of you for coming. I didn't really need that. I've been here before, so I didn't need that full-scale introduction. Just a few words would have been fine. Today, let's go back to the beginning. We are, of course, going to talk about DNA. And so I think we have a very self-selected group here that has probably come today. And so let me just check and see how many of you have not only taken the DNA test, but you found something good from it. Oh, look at that. Hey, that's just superb. That's just excellent. And I hope I won't ask anybody, if there's anybody who hasn't yet had their DNA test, but we expect that if there is such a person, we're going to convince you today that this is the thing to do, that it's the new frontier of genealogy. So that's the direction we're going. That symbol is just to show that we're in the DNA world today. And of course that means that there is kind of some new technology. I gave this very same class at the Southern California Jamboree in June. And they have a routine there where they have evaluations, and everybody who goes to every class gets to say, what they thought about the class. And then later, the people who presented, like that's me, they tell me what the people said. And of course, that's a way to sort of keep your humility a little bit, because I will tell you, you cannot please all the people all the time. But I pleased most of them, and I had a good time. But one comment that really kind of struck me was that somebody wrote down and said, it's really nice to have a senior person who is willing to get into the new technology. So I wonder, perhaps there are some of you who are in that same category who might feel like you're getting into some new technology. And indeed, there are a few things to learn, but I want people not to be frightened by this new technology, because it's something that older people can learn all of the basic things that you need to know. And there are certainly a lot of exotic things that you could learn, but to do probably what most of us want to do most of the time, we can all figure it out. And in fact, part of my job today is to give you some examples of how to figure out some of those things that take a little bit of effort, but maybe not an overwhelming amount. Among these topics that I have listed here today, several of them are just a few kind of basic things to kind of get us in the mood and be sure that we're kind of all on the same page, because we all need to understand just a few basic things. And so we'll talk about those things like the different companies and what they offer, the different scoring routines and what that means, and just a few other basic concepts. And then we're going to launch into the case studies of the day, which is kind of an interconnected case study, and it's going to take us out to the 6th and 7th generations. And I don't think you usually get that with the DNA class, and in fact there are some people who would say that is not possible. That is not true. It is eminently possible, and we will talk about exactly how you do that. Among the different companies, we're going to talk about at least 3 of them today. Family Tree DNA, which has been around for probably longer than most of them. They offer good things. They offer, with their Family Finder autosomal test, the autosomal is the one we're going to talk mostly about today. And so Family Tree DNA offers that. And they give you both a total score, which is just sort of an added up number of all the places where you have a match with somebody else. And then some people would say that it's even almost more important to have a long segment. And so they give you their longest segment score. And so we'll talk a bit about those things. They also have a chromosome browser, which Ancestry.com does not have. Different companies kind of have different things. Ancestry.com will only provide you with a total score. In fact, on the surface, it looks like all they're giving you is a qualitative score, like extremely high or very high. That's different. Or just plain high. But they will also give you, if you look in the right place, a number score, and that will be very helpful for you. Then we're going to talk just a little bit about JED Match, because that's where people can download and upload their data that they have taken from different tests, and JED Match will do certain other things for you, and it's free. And so it'd be kind of a good thing if all of you got in the JED Match Club. So, and they provide both the long segment, the totals, and also they will give you a chromosome browser. And they'll give you some more things beyond that. So those are the different things with the different companies, and we'll kind of sample into each one of those. We'll take a look first at the family tree DNA results, and you will see that here I'm in their club, and so when you go to their site now, and I will be interested where the arrow says we're going to look at our matches. And then if I want to do things with the chromosome browser, I'll click on that, and that's what I'll do. And so as we talk about our different case studies, we're going to talk about how we use those different features and tools. Here's something we kind of need to get a good grasp of, and that is that when we get a score, and you get a score of 500 or 1700, and we say, what does that score mean? And so that's where you kind of need to get it lodged in your head as to, if you get a certain number, what does that really kind of mean in terms of the score? And so, we'll use this for starters. If I have a first cousin who took one of these tests, and he should get a score of about 888, and by golly, he did. He got about 910 or something like that. He was close. These are not perfect numbers. That's kind of an average number for each of these different places. They start off, I didn't show it, but you could start off here at the top. I'm in two different of these clubs. I'm in both Ancestry and Family Tree DNA, so I load the one into the other, and I put both of them on JED Match, and so then I compare with myself. And I get a score of 3,700, which is as high as you can get, because I'm comparing, two people who are identical. Now, if it is father-child, mother-child, for some reason that score typically dips just a little bit. It's around 3,400. So if you take the test and you get a 3,400, you know who that person is. It's either a son, a daughter, a mother, father, and that's how you can tell that. If you have a brother or a sister, your siblings, I don't show that there, but that's about a 2,400. I don't really know quite why that dips down, say from where we are at 3,600 for myself or my parents, but that's what it is. And And so that's what you have to understand, that these scores are what they are. So say 2,400, that's a regular brother or sister. And then a half-brother, and some people say that they occasionally run into half-brothers and people like that on the DNA test, that's about a 1,750. In other words, it's twice as much as a first cousin. Every time one more person is thrown into the mix, the score gets diluted by about half. So my first cousin has a daughter, that's a first cousin once removed, and because she's getting half from her dad, who is my first cousin, but half from her mother, her score will get diluted by about half. And indeed, this works. I've got a couple of first cousin daughters in my DNA results, and they're scoring about 450, 460. They're in that range. And the range can be very wide because some people score a little more than they should or less. But this is the one we're interested in. What is it going to be on average? And so by the time you're down to a third cousin, there's enough people who have been added to the mix that now you only get a score of about 55. Then by the time you're at a fourth cousin, you divide by 1, you divide by 2 there, you divide by 2 again, now you're down to about 13. By the time you're at a fifth cousin level, according to this average kind of a thing, you don't even make the cut because your score is down there about 3.5. But it will turn out that a lot of people do make the cut because there are some people who get more or less of a particular ancestor's genetic DNA. Blaine Bettinger has a page. I would have shown it to you, but I thought the plagiarism police might get after me. So I'll just tell you about it, which is that he got something like 10,000 different people who contributed their DNA results. And then on the basis of that, he said, now, what is it really the average for a first cousin, a second, and a third? And it's pretty close in most of those cases. Certainly in the upper regions, it's very close to what academically you should get on average. But down here in the lower regions, Blaine's numbers go up a little bit. I think part of that is simply a self-selection process because the people who contributed the data are getting data on a fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh cousin who scored higher than he should. And so that's why Blaine Bettinger's people, on average, I think he gets a fourth cousin will score, much more than that 13. Yes. So speak very loud because we're being recorded.
So if U to U is 3,400 points, that's I think what you said.
37,
okay.
Me and me.
Okay, you and your son would be what, if you had a son? Half of that?
It would be, no, because he still gets more. Father to son, you're going to get about 3,400.
Okay, and father to grandson?
Father to grandson, let's see near how many levels. That's, let's see, did I do that right? So, let's see, you divide by 2 again, so 1,700, I would say.
Okay, so after father to son, then it becomes half and half
Half. Mm-hmm.
So if you're going back many generations with the same last name, once you get to the first child, then you can divide it by 2.
And that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
Am I correct in assuming that if within a family there's like cousins getting married to each other or...
It will louse up the whole thing. But sometimes we like that. Sometimes we don't like it, but it happens both ways. All right, this was for openers, and we'll come back to this one again. Now, this is what it really means in terms of identifying somebody. You get a score of somebody, and so somebody gets a score of about 222, and that means that they're in the category of like a second cousin. So perhaps they will descend, much like I do, from my, let's see, this is my mother, Hallie Tracy, and her parents, and then their parents. So now I'm 1, 2, 3 generations out, and so if somebody, and I'm getting people like that, and I don't even know most of these people, because now we're 3 generations away. That, let's see, this would be a first cousin. Now this is a second cousin, and so this is the way the system works. Now here are the scores. This is just a sample of what I got with family tree DNA. See, I started off, this is the better part, it is 4 years ago. And there were not many people in the club then. There were only like 226 matches that I had. And I've got to keep this thing updated. This is only, I updated it a couple months ago, but now I'm almost up to 2,000. Things are really jumping in this business. And so anyway, I now have, you know, it's like 10 times as many matches as I started with. But my highest score is that I've got a first cousin, and he's in the 900s. He should score 888. And the lowest, their family tree DNA's cutoff is down there about 7 or so. And so that's like something not quite a fifth cousin usually. And so here's my point, that on average, the scores for the fifth cousins aren't there because they don't make the cutoff. They're below, as we used to say in baseball, they're below the Mendoza line. So there are 2 different types of the matching scores for FTDNA. There's the total of all your matching areas, and then your longest segment, and we like that because that means in that particular spot, that's where you are probably getting something that you and the other person and a bunch of others maybe all would have that can be traceable to a specific ancestor. So here is an example. My first cousin that I just told you about, he's got a big long segment. 77 is his longest. And so then there's somebody who's in their second to fourth cousin category. They only score 92. That's like, oh, maybe it's a little better than a third cousin. But the long segment sort of says, I take that match seriously. Now, here are some definitions of the scores, and it seems like the people who are in the business change this from time to time. But generally speaking, there are a few basic rules, and certainly you are looking for as high a score as you can get. This is on Ancestry, and they say, what is your likelihood of having a common ancestor just within 5 or 6 generations? If you get a big score like that, you're in the 100% category practically. It's just a matter of identifying who is that particular ancestor. As the scores drop off a little, Ancestry wants to be very conservative, and so they'll say, well, okay, we still think that is very high. We'll give it a 99% chance or a 95. And then they include a lot of them in your first to fourth cousin categories that maybe they're not really the ones. Now, they do give qualitative scores, that's what I said, but they are going to give you that's why they'll say your score is extremely high or very high. And so those are going to be scores of at least 12 or something like that. And the good scores, they're still good scores. Some people, because Ancestry.com does not offer a user's manual like they maybe should, you just figure it out for yourself. And so here's how you find out what the score is. There is a little I up there. I don't know if it stands for information or what, but there it is, where the big arrow is. So you click on that, and I already know, they've told me, you've got a person here that you're matching extremely high. And so I'm going to click on the little I, and they tell you what the score is. Did everybody know that?
Is that your score or the person, the other person?
That's your score with the match. It's you and the match share that many centimorgans totaled up.
Have you gone into what the CM really means? Because I don't think I understand that.
We'll try to do that. All right, in this case, they don't give you which segment is the longest, but they will tell you there's a whole big bunch of segments, and I happen to know that this person is my first cousin's daughter. So she's scoring just about like she should, and I'm sure that she's got a number of good long segments. Now, looking at I told you about my family FTDNA database. This time, this is the Ancestry Database. And again, I've got to keep up to date on this because now I'm up to over 18,000. I think at the beginning of the year, I was sitting maybe around 12,000. By the end of the year, I'll be up to 20,000. That's how much things are jumping in Ancestry's business. They're jumping so much that some people say, I put my kid in there, but it's been 6 weeks. So, what's the matter with them? But I think they're working day and night, and they're processing these kits. But that's where we are.
Can you talk about the kit? Because I took my ancestry test 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yes.
But they've changed that test, have they not? And I don't sit in the system anymore because I don't have the new test. Am I correct?
It depends on which test you took. And I suspect you took what is called the Y test, which is the male father-to-father-to-father test.
I don't even know if they offered that when I took my test not that long ago. Because I've done that
But in fact, Ancestry only started testing, if my memory is correct, in 2012, and they were offering all 3 tests. And then after a couple of years, they said, we're only going to offer the autosomal family finder test. So the family finder is the one that's going to give you all of these many, many matches. So on this particular thing, my highest score, one of my nephews took the test. He scores even better than a nephew's supposed to. He's only supposed to get about 1750 or so. But you see, he's getting more than that. The Ancestry.com scores will go all the way down. Their cutoff is 6.0. However, that bottom half, maybe the bottom 90%, you don't usually care that much about. You're more interested in the really higher scores. Now, incidentally, just as a sideline point, the Ancestry DNA scores might be slightly more conservative than the FTDNA scores are. And there are some people who take both tests and then you can compare them and you see. And the JED Match Scores are usually kind of in the middle. The 3 different companies use different testing algorithms. And so just be aware of that. This is a look at JED Match when you go there and you see all of their different possibilities. And one thing that is to be looked for, probably the first basic ones, is where they will give you their one-to-many, and that's what you get on your regular thing on Ancestry.com. So we'll take a look at that. And so here it is. Here's the autosomal business. And so then over here is a total score, if you can see those small letters in the back. And then there's the largest segment. So here I am comparing myself with, let me see, is that with myself? Yeah. What did I get, a 35 something? I might have told you a little wrong. But anyway, that's like a perfect score because you don't get any better than that. But look at it, I've got a great big long segment. So I think any long segment, say over 30 or so, that's serious business, because that means, hey, I think we really got something there with that. So you kind of got to get it lodged in your head of how you can interpret some of these scores in such a way that you can really begin to make use of them. There's a lot of other information that I could tell you about with JED Match, but that's for another time. Now the range of scores, I've touched on that versus the average scores. Here's an if, and I'll tell you, I used to teach statistics in the public schools, and so anyway, I'm kind of comfortable with the mathematical things where you know what you're going to get, you know what it means, and there is no variation. You know if it's a normal curve, that's a normal curve. If it's these things. However, it doesn't work that way with these centimorgan scores, because let's say on the average we expect a third cousin to hit about 55, but some of them are going to score higher and some lower. Here's one of the big questions of the day, and the answer is it is because of recombination, or I like this word better, reshuffling. The genes get shuffled around every time a new child is born, and with that reshuffling, you get a little bit, just a little bit, not much, but a little bit more of the genetic material from some of the ancestors and a little less from some of the others. And then this gets exacerbated and enhanced over several generations, because after 4, 5, 6 generations, some of these ancestors you're still getting good genetic material from, some others not so much. And so it turns out that gets a star because that is a feature that is of great advantage to genealogists. If there were no reshuffling and you simply divide by 2 every time, and then you would know exactly where everybody was located, but you would never find anybody like a fifth cousin, because the fifth cousin on average is only going to score 3.5 and will not make the cutoff. But because of reshuffling, we can find people who score higher than they should. Let's look at some of them. Well, I've kind of halfway talked about this one. Why the advantage? Yeah, I've said that. If there were no reshuffling, that's what we would get, 3.5 plain and simple. And we therefore could never use DNA to find those unknown fifth cousins, but happily, and that's a 3-star item, that reshuffling will serve us to have a good thing there going for us. Now let me take a look at some people again. I'm just going to flash this chart again to remind you about where we are for the scores of a first cousin, third cousin, and so on. And that's in your handout. Now, some of my own average scores, my first cousin that I've talked about, he beat it. He got more than 888. He was 11% higher. He has 2 daughters, and both of those scored slightly higher than the expected average of 444. Doesn't always happen that way, but it did with those people. Because here I have some other, I've just picked a few other connections, other matches at random, and here's some that I happen to know exactly where they are. Most of these people are younger than I am, so they're not just second cousins, but second cousins twice removed, you know, because they're only 16 years old, or whatever it may be. So here are some of these second cousins, and as a second cousin twice removed, there's 2 more things, 2 more divisions here, so that's the equivalent score of a third cousin. But actually, that person only got a 33. That one only got a 15. Those people, all 4 of them, got a lot less than they were expected to get. In fact, here's a nice young woman who she barely made the cutoff. She scored 7.4, but I know, because I've got a good family tree and I know where she fits, she is a bona fide second cousin, twice removed. She should have scored much higher, but we get a fair amount of variation. And so you got to watch for that. You know, sometimes one person scores, you know, much higher or lower than they should, yes.
Well, when they score higher or lower, if they score higher, is that due to certain characteristics being stronger in the DNA, and that makes them go out further?
Two things. One is that I myself am not going to get exactly 50% all the way down, and so some of my own descendancies and some of my own DNA package is that my genetics, I might be stronger from one, say 4 generations out. There might be 1/4 great-grandfather, I'm getting more from him, but less from his wife, or something like that. So there's the factor of the I factor. And then the other factor is that the other person also is going to have these differential things of getting a different bag of DNA, and this is what happens. Now, we're getting ready to move into the case study. I'm going to start with an easy one. This is one that it just isn't hard to do. I've got a good solid paper trail back to my alliterative ancestor, Elijah Elifritz. And so he's living back there lived a good long life, well, a fairly long life. And his paper trail has always looked solid. I have information about, you know, where he lived as a young husband. I have census data, marriage data, death data. And so now we're going to look and see, of course, he has descendants now because he's 4 generations out there, and I'm not going to know all those people because they just get away from you. So we're going to use a couple of different features here as well. Here is my tree. There's my mother, Hallie Tracy. She got the name because they told her she fell off the comet. So that's Hallie, and her father, his mother, and a father. We only go back 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm back to Elijah Elifritz. And so Elijah, of course, will have a variety of descendants. So to find some of those descendants, I go to this place over here where it says make a search, and it's going to be the surname search option, and I put in this exotic name. Now, I like rare names because you're not going to find too many people maybe that belong to other people. And indeed, I found good things with the Elifritzes. But I click on that, and then I say, okay, give me all the people who in their family tree or someplace they've put in the name Elifritz. And I get a few hits. And not only those three, but see where the arrow shows that I'm getting some more. So also, Ancestry gives you those nice DNA circles. And so one of my circles is the Elijah Elifritz circle. And there's a bunch of people here, 9 of them, that have put in a tree, and according to their tree, they are descendants of Elijah Elifritz. So I can work with those people also. Here's what you get when you get an expansion of the DNA circle. I've got all these different, actually each one is a small group of people who are descended from, there's my group up there, there's 3 of us, and the thicker the line is, the more solid the connection is. Or if I so choose, I can say, give me a list of all those people in the circle. The ones that are listed in gold are DNA matches for me, and they're strong, they're good. But if it's blue, they match the circle, but they don't match me. But because they match the circle, they're pretty likely to be your kinfolk also. Yes.
Do they make that assertion based on the information that those other people have put in their tree on Ancestry?
Right.
So if they've copied off of some other tree that's bogus, they'll show up very strong and no more be related to you than I am.
You do have to watch out for bogus trees, and as we have learned on the public family trees, there's a lot of them there that are worthless. And so you have made a good point. We consider those family trees to be suspect going in. But one thing that this person does have going for it is that not only did he put in a tree, but he's got a big good matching score. So now I know he matches me somewhere, and if he doesn't match me with his incorrect tree, then it's up to me to find out where he matches. And so this means because you've got the double whammy there of both a good match and he put in his tree, most of these trees will be better than what you see on public family trees. They don't give you a percent score, but strong is the best, just as you would expect, and then good. And then they have a couple of categories that are less than emerging. I think they have one called weak. And so, but these are all just really good and solid. And besides, look, they all match me, all except that one. And so I pick out 6 of them because they've all shown a nice paper trail going back to Elijah. They all go a different route, and each one of those has an excellent score. 43 is the lowest one of them. And I'm showing you now, here's the picture. That's me. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm up to Elijah. Here's one that I'll call California Girl. I've communicated with her, and I know she's only about 25 years old. And then there's some other people. There's a score better. That's 83, some 40, 64. And so here they go all the way up. And some of them come through my descendant, my ancestor, I'm the descendant, or the sister, Mary Jane. But all of them go up the same route. They're all kind of showing The tree is there. They all claim to be descendants of Elijah. It all looks like they are. They all have marvelous scores. And so, because I didn't get just one or two of them, for starters, I've got 6. And in fact, if I looked a little further, I could get some more. And so, this means Elijah turns out to be really a solid ancestor. I mean, this confirms the fact that I did a good paper trail. So this is kind of one of the nice benefits of DNA, that those results will help you confirm your paper trail. In some cases, it might tell you that your paper trail didn't work out. But this one it did. So now I want to show you about those 6 people, what we would have expected for their score to be, because I know I have their tree, I know exactly what their relationship is, and I know that that person and that one, they should have scored about 7, should have on average. But look, somehow they all got more from Elijah than some other people did. There's one who just blew it right off. She only should have scored 14. She got a 72. Some of these others, it's comparable. And so this group of people, they all scored much higher than they should. Here is the best message of the day. And the best message is get your older people to take the test, because on average, if I match somebody, if I have a father or mother who's no longer living to take the test, you can bet that their score is going to be higher. So if you're only 30 years old, and some of you might be, but get your grandfather to take that test. You don't say, well, his DNA probably isn't very good because he's old. Hey, it's good. And so if you've got people, that's why that's a 5-star item. It doesn't get any more important than that. Now, what the examples tell us, and I keep beating it into the ground, I know, but some people score higher or lower than we expect them to, and so we kind of learn to not only to live with it, but to make that used for our advantage. It is great to find people who score higher than they should, because those are the people who have the scores that will help us with our results. Because I was interested in statistics, I tried to figure out, is there any way that these scores are kind of laid out in a manner that you can decide, yeah, so many percent of them, it's like the normal curve, because so many kinds of data fit with the normal curve, or maybe some other kind of a curve. But the more I looked at these scores that I've run across, it just flat out does not work that way. These ranges are their own ranges, and they just don't fit a normal curve. I don't know what they fit, but it appears they simply fall where they fall, and so there is no definite pattern, and there's going to be a sizable range for any of these relationships. But here's a basic rule: the closer the relationship, the higher the score. And as I told you, even Blaine Bettinger with his 10,000 people, those people who were on average first cousins, second cousins, the score was pretty close on average to what our chart says. Incidentally, Bettinger is providing, he's coming to the Bay Area. It is March 2nd and 3rd. And so keep that in mind. He's sort of the number one person in DNA. Okay, now we're going to move on. we're going to go back to the 5th generation, then we're going to go back to the 6th, and we'll find some people who are 5th higher than they should. Now that's good, because a lot of our families had many descendants, so this means on average, if we get 100 people to take the test, about 10 or 15 of them will score a lot higher than they should, and those are the people that are going to help us. So a different family, kind of a related family, it's still on my mother's side of the house. There's my mother. There's a lot of public family trees. They don't work. They don't have any sources. And so it's a matter of you've somehow got to dig it out, and I've been working on this off and on for years. On my dad's side, where we go back to Germany, we can go back forever. And so I'm kind of accustomed to that nice genealogy thing. It doesn't work in wherever those folks were. Yes.
Do you record the offspring of any of your people on your chart, or you just go directly to the father and son and so on?
Now, in my, call it my big family tree, my big database, I would have, say, children for some of these people and their children, so that then, if I really was good at it, and in fact, I have a few cases where this happened, that I get a match, and I run across a name, and I say, oh, I already have that name in my database because she descends from Harmon by a different wife. And even that is a useful thing, because now if it's a different wife, I know that that genetic thing came from Harmon and not that wife. And so you're kind of good if you, but that's a sideline thing. I've kind of got to begin to move forward here because we're going to run out of time. So Jonathan I'm working on, and so to put it in context, this is where he is. He's in the state of New York, western New York. He's out there on the frontier. That was the frontier in 17th. They just give the name of head of household. And I don't know where he's born. He could have been born in any of those places. The public trees show a lot of those people, but I've told you what I think of public trees. And they didn't do me any good for Jonathan.
What is the public tree? I don't understand.
Go to ancestry.com for a public tree, and then go search, and then select public trees.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And maybe you're lucky and you find something there. Once in a while you do.
Do you believe that private trees are more authentic, or they're just private?
Just private.
Okay. Thought I'd check on that.
Yeah, see, I think that your posture is correct. It's kind of good for a genealogist to be a little skeptical. So you always wear your skeptical hat when you look at those public trees.
Well, you know, public trees are a marvelous source of information if you are able to sift through them and discard the garbage, which is like 90% of it. Once in a while you find a gem.
That's right. Okay, moving forward here. Our strategy, we've already talked about this a little bit in regard to what we did with Elijah. Because now we're going to think about surname selection. We'll look at what they posted, and we're going to have a few people of interest, and then we're going to look at their shared matches, people that they match, we all match together. So I'm going to go to Ancestry to do that, and then we'll also do that on JED Match. So here we are, and I put in the name Tracy, and then I'm going to get a big bunch of matches. In fact, it just keeps going. I got at least 2 pages of them. I got 61 matches But that's better than dealing with 18,000.
So this
So-
is just the DNA matches, nothing else?
That's right.
Okay.
And in fact, these are only the DNA matches where the person had listed a posted tree. So in fact, I'm probably going to miss out for about half of those people, because only about 50% of the people post their trees. You must always post your tree. You will help other people. You will help yourself, because you can't get a DNA circle. You can't get Ancestry to help you if you don't post your tree. So this is good. We're going to identify the specific matches that have some connection. And so here I am. And so I find a few people. Well, I've got 61 people to wade through at least. So I'm wading through them. And I find one here, gets a good score, 32, spread over only 2 segments. And so at least one of the segments is 16 or 17. And so, and this match had a really good posted tree that goes way back, goes back to New England, and that's one of my target places, and back to a Tracy group in Connecticut. And this one showed 3 different ancestral lines way back there. I will call her Ida. And so here is Ida. Well, here's my own line that goes back to that Jonathan, and then it's a question mark after that, and maybe another Jonathan, but she's got a better tree. She's got better research than I have. And in fact, because there are 1, 2, 3 different Tracys that come down to her, she's got 3 different lines that all end up with that same place in the state of Maine, way back when. And so it's a different kind of a thing, because look, with those 3, she's got a triple header, and so that situation might account for her high score, because she's getting a triple dose of the Tracy DNA. Maybe that's why she got a high score.
Does that mean cousins married? Is that the likelihood?
No, well, let's go back and look. It's just 3 different children of that one person named Jonathan there. 3 different, so those are not, no, they're not cousins. They might have been, but they weren't.
They're third cousins. Mary Ann's in place.
Well, yeah, by the time you get down there, she's kind of a third cousin of herself or something, or a fourth. So here's the thing. She's got 3 different trees going back there that might have accounted for the score, and the lines end up with 3 different siblings. One of the lines was even through her father rather than the mother, and she might be something like a 6th cousin or a 7th cousin. So there's her score, 32. And so a typical 6th or 7th would not have made the cut. According to Blaine Bettinger, he goes all the way down to an 8th cousin. He's got an average of 9 for the people who are like 7th or 8th cousins. Now, of course, remember, he's only getting the ones who really had an 8th cousin. But anyway, here we have this triple score for Ida. So who's the common ancestor? Because she and I have such really strong scores there, the 43, I think somehow we should match. It's just a matter of how can we identify that? But her Jonathan that she goes back to, he's got a very good paper trail, and it doesn't seem to match mine. So we might end up a generation or so even earlier. And this is one thing to know, that DNA does not identify the exact common ancestor. That's where your own judgment comes in. So now we're going to look at her shared matches. These are the people that she shares with me. I match them, she matches them, and there's a big bunch of them. there's 23. I didn't update it right. It's either 20. It's a good number. It's probably 26 and growing. And not surprisingly, the same names kept recurring. So we're going to get a cluster of matches, all of whom probably go back to that same general group of people. Here is the list of Ida and a bunch of her shared match people. Ida gets a score of 32, and see some of these get 28, 27, and so on. And there's their longest segment as well. So I've listed about a dozen of these people, and they mostly match one another. And they don't match other people in my database. They're only matching, it's a closed pool. And this closed pool of people, I now begin to say, who are these people? They all kind of match one another. They don't match other people. And so that's why I now show you this picture. And I'll tell you where my different people on my mother's side of the house comes from. First of all, look at Ida. Her matches are clustering out here in this Tracy area. I'm calling it a quadrant that's probably maybe a 1/8, so it's an octant or something different than a quadrant. But they're out here. They're beyond Jonathan Tracy. They're way out here, and here's this group of people who are kind of matching one another. Now, just to tell you about a little bit about the good things of my own family tree, this is just good fortune. Here's my dad. All his people come from Germany. I'm not going to get a mixture of cousins and so in my own database. Here is, let's look at Elijah's group. The Elifritzes came from Germany to New Jersey, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and so there's nothing that's New England or Connecticut about them. They're a different group. Here is, these are the further out Elifritzes, and then here's the Sines family. Here's another family that came to America, North Carolina, and then eventually Illinois. Here's some Virginia people, Tennessee people. All of these people come from different parts of the world, but over here, this is the only one that is a New England group. I like that because now it's an easier, a more manageable group to deal with. And so I'm smiling. And I'm now smiling also because I found another person that Ida matched and I matched who had a good score. And so he also goes back to the state of Maine, and he also shows a tree with the same parents that Ida had. It looks like this family was kind of connected somehow. So we'll take a look at him. See, here's Ed going all the way back to that state of Maine. And here I am. I'm not quite sure where I'm going, but I've got Ed. Now, I had several other people because I showed you that whole array of them, but a lot of them did not post a family tree, or their tree was only like a 3-person tree. There could be a lot more data out there, but there were a few other shared match people that I'm going to work with. And so here's one of them. PR, I'm protecting the innocent by giving them kind of fictitious names and stuff. But PR has a good score, 26.9, and has more than one ancestral line that goes back there. Let's look at his line. And so here's PR. PR has 2 lines, and this is where, we'll get some kind of different cousins there, but he's getting a double dose of the early Tracys, which probably accounts somewhat for his good score. So because his trees go back so well, and he's got 2 of them, I think that maybe accounts for his score. And so he's going back kind of the same direction that Ida did and that Ed did, the same general direction at least. PR score, he only had one segment, so that was easy. And so that makes the score better than it would have been. And remember, an average person out there at the 6th or 7th generation, they don't even make the cut. But he's getting a double dose. So at this point, I'm thinking we really must have a common ancestor for all of these people. And Ida and PR, they're showing their tree, and then they're showing that their person is a son of a Christopher Tracy who could be part of my line. So now I find another guy, Lionel. He gets 26 in just one segment. He's got a line going back to the same place. There's Lionel. And so I'm going to show you in a minute all of these on the same sheet. So Lionel just had one single family tree, but you never know but what there might have been another cousin or so mixed up in there, because he's certainly got a good score. And so if these people are going to match me, it'll be like at the 6th or 7th cousin level. So here's looking at Lionel and his score, and I keep beating this into the ground that a 6th or 7th cousin would normally, on average, not score enough to make the cut, but some of them do, and this guy is one of the 10 or 15%. For whatever reason, Lionel got more than his share of that early Tracy genetic material, and so he gets a much higher score than he should. So why did they score high? Maybe because they had 2 or 3 lines. Maybe we just don't know. Maybe we don't have all the information. Or maybe they're among that 10 or 15% of people who just, for that ancestor, they just got way more than their share. And they keep passing it on. So now let's go over, we've been on Ancestry all this time, let's take a look at family tree DNA. And we're going to look at those posted trees to see who they have. So we'll do the same thing we did with Ancestry. And so I put the name Tracy in there, and I get a bunch of hits. Look at that, I got how many? 45? Let's say 45?
15 or 15.
Or 15? I'm not sure. But anyway, where the star is, I've got a guy who got a 46. And so that's a good score. And his longest segment, they give us that, 19. There he's showing that Tracy is one of his families, and he has posted his family tree. So he fit the criteria, and he had posted his tree, and he goes back to those same people, Jonathan and Christopher Tracy, way back when. He had a lot of shared matches, so I could begin to look at some of them as well. This time I'm going to look at the chromosome browser, because that's what Family Tree has that Ancestry does not. So I look at some of Larry's matches, because he's got a big bunch of them, and I compare those matches, and here are some of his better matches. Here's what you get on the different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different chromosomes all the way down to 23. But here's number 9, and look at those 5 people that I have now selected who all have, and I can also do the trick of where I say, how long is that segment for each of them? But they are overlapping, they're in the same spot. There's 5 of them that are getting a big bunch of genetic material in common on chromosome number 9, And of course, I get it too. And so here we are, there's about 6 of us here on Family Tree DNA that it looks like that is the place where if I had tested those other people from Ancestry, but I couldn't because they don't have a browser. And so, but this is really this is an important one. This is a good one. This is one that says you have really hit the jackpot on this one, because we've got 5 people who are all good matches. We know we match somewhere. We know we've got a common ancestor. It's just a matter of saying, who is that? So he has this good family tree, and then it was supplemented by the other shared matches. I also went to JED Match, where fortunately Larry was there too. And again, I could show you that one, but I've just shown you the one. So JED Match was effective in doing also a one-on-one comparison, which they do, on Larry and me, and they say, you guys have a common ancestor according to our best knowledge. So, and we get more people on chromosome 9. So let's take a look at Larry. He's going back there to that same zone that those other people went to, and one further back is where I would hook up with him. I don't hook up with him at that level because I'm going through a man named Christopher. Let's see, this is my Jonathan. His father's name is Jonathan. There is a Christopher, and then we hook up. So we analyze those Larry results. They are in Maine, just like those other people. Larry could be a 6th or 7th cousin. And so here is the analysis. Larry has a 46, and for some reason, he got that good score. He should not have, but he did. So we'll now take a look at 5 of them. That'll be Ida, Ed, and the others. And then we're going to get some more potential evidence, and that is of those different shared match people, but some of them didn't post their trees. Like, I'm just sure that if all of those people that are matches for Ed and Ida and PR, and they're good matches for all of them, they didn't post their tree, but so what? I know that they're in the same kind of people with the same connections. So we used the browser, and the browser definitely points to more matching people. So I'm going to look at the 5 Ancestry.com matches and Larry. We'll stack them all up, and I couldn't fit Ed into the chart because look at that chart. Here I am on the left. Here's Ida's different trees. Here is Lionel, Larry, and PR has a couple, and Ed didn't make the chart, but they're all going back there to New England. They're all back in the state of Maine, and this Jonathan's father is the one that I think is also the father of my person. And by the way, I found a few more just for fun that had reasonably good scores who had posted their trees, and then not to forget, we've got a lot of those other people who didn't post their trees. So at this point, I've got 9 matches, all those trees, they all go back to this man named Christopher Tracy, and they go through different people, which is good, because if they all went through the same one, that wouldn't be quite so good. And so now my own tree will connect more likely with that 1680 guy. So why does this evidence look so good? Well, I've got them. And then I've got posted trees that work with all of them. And so I know that with all those people who have good scores, we're going to match somewhere. We've got a common ancestor someplace back there. And this is really important. Those shared matches made a nice cluster of people. The cluster, that's where it was a closed pool. They only matched with one another, and they didn't match with the Ellifritzes or the Bruces or the Bakers or anybody else in my tree. And the location was right. They're all going back to that New England zone. So I now take a new look at my own family tree. And with all this data, I want to do my own best paper trail. And so because I know now that I've got a target to look at for where this person is, like I know that my Tracy didn't just pop in from nowhere, that my Tracy came right out of New England like those others. And so I added my most likely people to the tree, posted it, and now Ancestry.com can help. Ancestry.com so this is the tree that I posted. After my Jonathan, there's his father, and I knew that, and from then on, the paper trail gets good because there's a lot of data. So once I make this a link, I know that Jonathan Sr.'s father's name is Christopher, as is his father, and they go way back to early Connecticut. So that's what I post, and I get some good surprises because they give me some new shared ancestor hints. They'll do that for you if you post your tree. They gave me 12 more people that they said, these people just might match you because it's a new DNA circle. And so, no, they didn't give me the circle. They just gave me shared ancestor hints. So some of those go back to earlier traces. Like here's one of them, and that's a 7th cousin according to Ancestry. And that must be an old fellow because he's at the same level I am, and he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, however many, and we both go to an early Christopher Tracy, born 1680, and he's a lot of generations back. So that's the connecting point, and so it seems likely that that's where I'm going to connect up with Ida, PR, Larry, and the rest of those guys. And now I have these other new cousins. This guy only scored 8.3, but he shouldn't have scored anything because he's a 7th cousin. But as Bettinger shows, there are some people who score even in the 8th or so. Here's another one that's out there. And so, however many that is. So I'm getting more and more. Ancestry gave me several others at that point, some right next to it, and one that's even a generation earlier than that. And that says he's an 8th cousin. Wow. And so see, this is the born 1680, he's born even earlier. So now I'm getting 9th generation matches, 8th cousins. And so Ancestry doesn't bat an eye, they just say, yeah, that's an 8th cousin. There are people in the world of DNA who say, you cannot find anybody beyond a 4th cousin. Those people are full of beans. That just is not true. So here we are going way back to that same spot, and this is not necessarily unique. And here's another one on another line that I have, and Blaine Bettinger does it too, and he's the all-star, and so I think I'm on sort of safe ground. Let's stack up all the evidence that we've got. I've got 9 different matches that go back to that Jonathan Tracy, the one in Maine. Then some more that go back earlier. Of course, these go back earlier also. So now I've got about 15, and then I've got some more that connect even. That's a total of 20 matches. I could not write a better script than this. This is something that if you get that many, and they're all going in the same direction, and many of them have good scores, and they match one another, and they're in the right part of the world, it is indeed compelling. So I had been stuck with that Tracy family. Now I'm finding matches way back, 6th, 7th cousins, and it just happened at that same time that I got some good stuff on the paper trail. I just happened to find, it was another researcher who tipped me off, another kind of a 4th cousin or something. And so I knew that this Jonathan Tracy's father, also named Jonathan, I knew when he was born, but he kind of got lost over the years. I needed some solid records, but here it was that, I was able to find this good data. This is a property record from New Jersey, and it's kind of fun to read this. It's almost like calligraphy if you look at the way they wrote that. This indenture made the 3rd day of September in the 11th year of the reign of our sovereign Lord George III by the peace of God, and it goes on, defender of the faith. And here's the year, Anno Domini 1772. And then it is a document that shows Jonathan Tracy, where the arrow is, of the county of Sussex of New England. And there he is buying land in 1742. So that was just a very useful document.
Isn't that Massachusetts?
Got it where?
So isn't that county in Massachusetts?
Oh, that county is in New Jersey. It was a floating county because I actually got the records in New York records, because that was, once upon a time, New York claimed the county. It's very tricky to find some of these things. So here's a document that I found Jonathan Tracy Sr. and his son Jonathan Tracy Jr., which was a useful thing too. Now I say, what is Inigo Montoya doing in a genealogy presentation? And I'll tell you why. You've seen the movie, you know about Buttercup that we loved, and Wesley, and we liked, we liked all of them. But we especially liked Inigo, who was on this mission, a quest to find the man who had done his father in. And at the end of the movie, the giant is talking to him, and Wesley's talking to him, and Inigo says, I don't know what to do now that, I've been doing that forever. And they make certain suggestions. Well, much like that, I've been chasing after Jonathan for years. I have found him. I have found his ancestors, and much like Inigo now, I say, what do I do next? We have come to the end, and these are the things that you should remember. To get maximum advantage, do a couple or 3 different tests. I have not done 23andMe, but I've done those others, and of course, MyHeritage is now in the game. So at least 2 or 3 of them, and because you'll find different things on different ones. Remember, the higher the score, the better. And remember, the world of reshuffling is your friend, because maybe 10 or 15%, and those are the ones you'll want to find, they're going to score much higher than average. And of course, the converse of this is that some will score lower, but you just take the good ones. And so the DNA testing is, we've already learned that it is superb for finding people just 3 or 4 generations out. It is more challenging to find them in the 5th, 6th, or 7th, but it can be done. And so the way you do it, here were a few features: the surname selection, the shared match, the DNA circles, the shared ancestor hints. And you're going to find some 5th and 6th cousins because you're going to look for those 10 or 15% of the people. And I hope that you will have success. As they say in the other movie, it's time to get started. Thank you. And I'll stay and answer questions.